Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we are tackling the absolute philosophical elephant in the room. I mean, just look at our world. We've got 10 to 12 major world religions, plus literally hundreds of smaller traditions scattered all across the globe. For anyone who thinks deeply about spirituality, this sheer volume of different faiths creates some incredible philosophical tension. Are they all pointing to the exact same thing, or are they fundamentally at odds? Today we're mapping out the great debate over religious pluralism.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at our roadmap. We'll start with the problem of many religions, define the three paths to choose from, and then heavily explore John Hick's religious pluralism. After that, we'll examine the flaw in his theory, and finally, we'll explore the inclusivist middle ground.
Part 1. The problem of many religions. And let's be real, this isn't just some abstract puzzle for academics. This is a very real, everyday dilemma for the typical person on the street.
It basically boils down to this singular, monumental question. Is there one true religion, or are there many paths to God? Or, to put it another way, if there is an ultimate reality out there, how exactly do we connect with it? Your answer to this question fundamentally shapes how you view humanity, culture, and really, all of history.
Part 2. Three paths to choose from. Now, before we start evaluating the arguments, we really need to clearly define our terms so we have a solid anchor in this debate.
And this brilliantly illustrates the landscape. First, we have religious pluralism, the idea that many different religions lead to ultimate reality and salvation. On the complete opposite end, we have religious exclusivism, which argues that only one religion is entirely true and leads to that reality. And then we've got this fascinating third option, religious inclusivism. This is the view that while there is only one true religion, devoted followers of other faiths might actually be covert or anonymous followers of that true religion without even realizing it.
Part 3. John Hick's religious pluralism. You really can't talk about pluralism without talking about John Hick. He's the major philosopher who formulated the absolute most popular defense of this view. As you can see from his quote here, Hick believed that beneath all the surface-level differences of world religions, there is a deep, deep unity. He suggests that all these different beliefs, practices, and liturgies are really just different expressions of a single human drive. We are all essentially trying to move from a profoundly unsatisfying state to one that is limitlessly better by relating to the real.
To explain how this actually works, Hick borrows from the philosopher Immanuel Kant. Think of it like wearing culturally tinted glasses. Kant argued that we don't see reality unfiltered. Our minds impose categories onto the world, while Hick applies this directly to God. On the left side, we have the ultimate divine reality, what Kant called the noumenal. It's totally beyond human concepts. On the right side, we have that reality as we actually experience it through our human cultural lenses, the phenomenal.
But you might be wondering, if we're all just looking through different cultural lenses, how do we know any of these religions are actually connecting with the real? Hick says we just have to look at the spiritual fruits. When you examine devout followers in Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, or Buddhism, you find this core commonality: shared ethical insights, an unselfish regard for others, and a consistent presence of love and compassion.
We see this parity in virtue across history, even if the paths look vastly different. You've got separatist saints like Julian of Norwich or Sri Aurobindo, who withdraw into deep prayer and meditation. Then you have activist saints like Joan of Arc or Mahatma Gandhi, who seek to totally change the world. Despite taking these completely different approaches to faith, Hick argues they all produce the exact same high moral fruit of compassion.
So Hick makes it clear, to say that the deities worshipped by the world religions are appearances of the real is not to say they're just illusions or fiction. Not at all. They are genuine interpretations. The human mind imposes its own conceptual resources on religious experiences. This means different religions emerge from different cultures simply because their conceptual categories differ from time to time and place to place.
Part 4. The flaw in the theory. Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is the tension it creates. While Hick's theory sounds incredibly tolerant, it hits a massive philosophical roadblock thanks to British scholar Keith Ward's devastating critique.
As Ward points out, you simply cannot ignore the radically incompatible truth claims between religions. If one religion claims we live one life and then face eternal judgment, and another claims we reincarnate thousands of times, they logically cannot both be entirely true. Because all assertions affirm something, they absolutely must exclude something else. Truth claims by their very nature are exclusive.
And so we arrive at this Socratic logic trap that Ward springs on Hick's theory. Remember, Hick claims the ultimate reality is ineffable, completely beyond human thought and language. But if that's true, How can we possibly know it even exists at all?
Let's walk through Ward's logical teardown step by step to really see this. First, Hick establishes that the real is completely unknowable. Okay, sure. But second, Hick confidently claims to know that all religious paths are equally valid experiences of it. Step 3 is where it completely falls apart, the contradiction. If the ultimate reality is truly unknowable, you cannot possibly assess the accuracy of the different paths trying to reach it. You just can't have it both ways. You can't say something is entirely beyond human understanding and then write books explaining exactly how it works.
Part 5. The inclusivist middle ground. Fortunately, Ward doesn't just tear down Hick's theory, he offers a really fascinating way out of this logical dead end.
Ward makes a distinction between what he calls hard pluralism and soft pluralism. Hick's hard pluralism fails because it relies on an unknowable reality while making absolute claims about it. Ward's soft pluralism, on the other hand, argues that the real can manifest in many traditions, allowing humans to respond to it appropriately. And you know what? This soft pluralism is actually just a form of religious inclusivism.
A brilliant example of this inclusivist view comes from the famous author C.S. Lewis. He maintained that there is an exclusive truth regarding salvation, but that God's grace can absolutely apply outside the strict bounds of formal religious practice. In other words, one can hold an exclusive truth while believing God still works covertly in the hearts of people in entirely different contexts.
Ultimately, if Hick's pluralism fails because we cannot verify unknowable paths, inclusivism offers a powerful alternative by focusing on applied grace rather than just cognitive knowledge. Think about it. If salvation requires a complex cognitive understanding of metaphysics, it raises massive issues. What happens to infants or those without the formal capacity to understand theology? The inclusivist argues that it isn't merely our intellect that saves us, but a divine reality acting upon us.
And that brings us to the ultimate lingering question we all have to wrestle with, whether you lean toward exclusivism, inclusivism, or pluralism. What exactly is the necessary condition for salvation? How much does knowing the right theological facts matter versus the orientation of your heart? It's a profound puzzle, and one that challenges the very foundation of how we understand truth, grace, and each other. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive in the Explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.